Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast. I'm your host, April Seifert. There is nothing more powerful than a woman who is inspired to action, and that's my number one goal, to inspire you, my listeners, to take action in your lives. Each week, I get to interview some of the most inspiring women, and I'm bringing those interviews to you. Let's do it. Hey guys, welcome back to the Women Inspired Podcast. I am your host, April Seifert, and I am so grateful that you are joining me for this second episode of 2018. I hope you all had an amazing new year. I hope you had a great first week and got off to a great start and are really excited about what the next year will bring. Now, as I mentioned last week, one of my goals this year is to really let you guys in a little bit more and help you get to know me a little bit more and just be a little bit more vulnerable and open about why some of the topics that we cover in the podcast are so important to me and why I am so passionate about the work that I'm doing with the podcast and with the blog and with my website, because ultimately, this is the stuff that really fuels me, and this is the stuff that I'm truly passionate about. And I really and truly believe it is some of the most important work that I will ever do in my life. Now, last week, we went through a couple of life events that completely changed my outlook on life forever. And I really hope you guys tuned into that episode. We talked about a couple of things. We talked about my dad and watching him go through his battle with colon cancer. Ultimately, my dad passed away when I was very young, and that was an extremely impactful life event. We also talked about what it was like for me going through some of the crazy symptoms that I did and ultimately being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which is, for those who aren't familiar, a very rare neurological condition. It's incurable and it's extremely unpredictable and can result in a lot of different issues. And I've had most of them happen to me directly. And if you haven't listened to that episode, before you dive into what we're going to go through today, I really suggest you go back and you listen to that episode first. This is all going to seem pretty out there and pretty crazy unless you have the context of understanding where I'm coming from. This is really going to hit you in the wrong way, I think, unless you have the background as to why I'm so passionate about the things that I'm going to say today and why I really feel compelled to share this message with you. So, all of the stuff that I'm going to say today will make way more sense if you have the context of the first episode under your belt. So if you haven't listened to that, I highly suggest you go back and listen. Now this week, it's going to be kind of a heavy episode. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be one of those episodes that I hope makes you think. It's going to be one of those episodes that is not easy to hear. But ultimately, I have one and only one goal with this episode. I want to plant the seed in your mind that we all only have one single finite life. And because we only get one, because it's finite, our one life is one of the most precious gifts we've ever been given and will ever be given. Your one life is incredibly precious. And my goal today is to get you to realize that, really realize that, so that you can start to use that to your benefit. Because it's amazing, amazing things happen when you really let that notion sink in. You can do almost anything. So let's get started. I had to confront the reality that I only have one life and that it's very finite pretty early on in my life. Now, I mentioned this already. I watched my dad die from colon cancer. It happened over a 5-year period. It was grueling. It was extremely difficult to watch. And in the end, what I really had to come to terms with is not only the fact that I wasn't going to have my dad in my life anymore, but when you watch somebody that close to you pass away, it really starts to settle in that life is finite, meaning my life is finite. I'm going to die one day. Holy crap. That is terrifying at first. It's almost an incomprehensible notion at first to think about the fact that this experience that we have every day at some point is going to come to an end. Oh my gosh. I also talked about last week, and this is also another really important notion, I talked about the experience that I had as I was going through the symptoms of multiple sclerosis. I talked about going blind twice, how difficult it was to, even like walk across the room to go to the bathroom sometimes. I couldn't walk, I couldn't see, I couldn't feel most of my body. We're talking some serious physical limitations. And ultimately from that, what I learned is that the notion of being a healthy person, it's not a given. And it's not something that any of us can take for granted. Being in denial about our own mortality and the impermanence of our health is a privilege. Now, this privilege was one that was taken from me by these two life experiences. After watching my dad pass away, after getting the diagnosis that I had and experiencing what I did leading up to that, I lost the privilege of being in denial about how critical every single day is, about how short life is, about how fleeting our health can be. I lost that privilege. And that was extremely hard. Don't get me wrong. And anybody who's been through that situation, those of you listening, if you've ever been through cancer treatment or something extremely adverse has happened to you, or you've watched someone else be sick, or anything like that has happened to you, you know how difficult that is to come to terms with. But for those of you who haven't had that firsthand experience, what I'm asking you to do today in this episode is actually even harder, because my privilege of denial was taken from me. I didn't have a choice, but I'm asking you to willingly give yours up without a major life event, without watching somebody pass away, without almost dying yourself or going blind or having any other crazy health situation happen. Without any of that, I'm asking you to willingly give up the denial that you might be in, that your life is finite and that your health is not guaranteed. Now, why in the heck would you want to do that? I guarantee you're asking me that. Like, why would I possibly want to have to sit here and contemplate the fact that I'm going to die someday, right? That seems crazy because it's a really painful thing to think about. And it's a really difficult notion to not only wrap your head around, but to sit with and actually accept. It's very difficult. The reason why I'm asking you to do it in this episode, and the reason why I'm going to pound this into you in this episode, is because there are some immediate effects that start happening once you accept that your life is finite and that your health is not guaranteed. Once you accept them and you let go, willingly let go of the privilege of denial, your life opens up. You start to realize that who you spend your time with, said another way, who you choose to spend your time with, and what you spend your time doing, again, flip that around, what you choose to spend your time doing, those are some of the most important decisions you are ever going to make. Because when you accept the fact that your life is finite, when you accept the fact that your health is not guaranteed, you realize that time is the most non-renewable resource on the planet. That's worth repeating. Time is the most non-renewable resource on the planet. And the kicker is, icing on this crazy cake I'm baking for you today, is that if you're an adult and you're listening to this, which I'm pretty sure, I'm going to venture to say 100% of you are, a huge chunk of your life is already over and you're not getting it back. So all you have left is the time that's left in your life, and none of us knows how long that is. This stuff is important. Those decisions you make, who you spend your time with, what you spend it doing, are critically important, and you make them every single day without even thinking. I'm going to tell you right now, it is time for you to stop being unintentional about those decisions. It is time for you to start intentionally making those decisions. You've heard me talk about this for a year in podcast episodes, where I am so excited for people who have quit their jobs, ditched a relationship, started a new hobby, traveled to a new place, done the thing that they wanted to do, stopped doing the thing that they didn't want to do because it didn't serve them anymore. This is why. Your life is so incredibly precious. And when you accept that, when you really, really and truly accept that and let it sink in, you can live unlicensed. Now, what do I mean by that? I want you to start thinking about some of the things that typically hold people back, right? There's a big one. There's a big F word. There's a big 4-letter F word. It's called fear. It holds people back from so much. The fear of being judged, the fear of failure, the fear of not doing something perfectly. When you accept that your life is finite, what the heck is scarier than that, right? All of a sudden, the importance of experiencing the short time that you have here, it begins to outweigh fear faster than I can even describe to you. And in some cases, the fear of acting, the fear of going out and doing the thing that you want to try, even if you fall on your stinking face, oh my gosh, that fear is so much less than the fear of missing out, than the fear of regret. There's a blog post, not mine, someone else's, that I'm going to link to in the show notes of this episode because I really think it's important that you all take a peek at it and explore it. But I'll go through the high points here. This blog post was written by a woman named Bronnie Ware, and she basically interviewed a bunch of people who were at the end of their life. And she talked to them about something really, truly scary. She talked to them about regret. Here's what they said. They regret that they didn't have the courage to live their life true to themselves and not the life that other people expected of them. Raise your hand in your car, in your house, in your gym, wherever you're listening to me right now. Raise your hand if that's you. It definitely was me at one point. If you're not living the life that is aligned with you, aligned with your values, that brings you joy, whatever weird thing that is, as long as you're not breaking the law or hurting somebody else. If you're not living that life, you're wasting your time. Time is the most non-renewable resource on the planet. Second, people say they wish they hadn't worked so hard. Do you know how much time we put in at our jobs? Oh my God, it is insane how much time we spend working. Typically, we're working for other people's goals at our jobs. We're giving them so much time, this precious resource that we have. And people at the end of their lives regretted that. They regretted that they didn't express their feelings. They regretted that they didn't stay in touch with their friends. And the bottom line, they regretted that they didn't let themselves be happier. What this all amounts to is the regret of not going after the things that fill us up and make us feel so fulfilled. The regret of not doing those things. And that, my friends, is terrifying. So my biggest wish for all of you with this episode is for you to start sitting with the idea that your life is finite and letting that seed that you're planting today, letting it germinate, letting it work in your life, letting it help guide the decisions that you make. Increase how intentional you are about those decisions that you're making every single day. What can you do today to get more out of life? Who are you hanging around with? Who's improving your experience and who's not? I want you to start thinking about these things so that you too can live unlicensed, so that you too can start to shed some of the fear that we all carry around and start to go after the things that you truly want to do. Make the most of the time you have here. Make the most of this amazing, precious gift that you've been given. It is the cliche of all cliches for people to sort of sit around and wonder what the definition of life is. So today, I'm going to leave you with my definition of life. To me, life is just a series of todays strung together. That's it. All we really have is today, and then hopefully the next today, and then hopefully the next today. And so if you think back to what I challenged you to do a little bit earlier, to think about what you can do today to improve your experience, and you think about what I said even earlier in the episode about how the decisions you make about what you do with your time and who you spend it with are critically important, what that all boils down to is those decisions that so many people are making without even thinking. Their life depends on those decisions, because literally all your life is a series of todays that are strung together. I want you to live those todays like your life depended on it, because it does. And that's where the title of this episode came from. I want you to start taking those decisions that you're not even thinking about today. I want you to start taking them seriously, because your life depends on those decisions. So I know this episode was really heavy. I know we talked about a lot of crazy stuff. Next week, I have a really amazing, inspiring interview for you. I promise we'll get back to that content. But I hope as you listen to these interviews going forward, I hope you listen to them through a new lens with a renewed understanding of why I'm so passionate about this and why you really should be passionate about it as well. Why I want you to see people who are doing big things with their lives and really living in a way that aligns with them and their values and their goals and what makes them happy. Because I want that same thing for you. I know what it felt like in my life to not live like that. And I know what it feels like now. And it is so much better now. And I want that same thing for you. You've heard me talk about this before, but I hope again that these first couple of episodes this year have started to put it into context and started to make it make sense a little bit more. But I'm so passionate and so serious about helping people live their life to the fullest, helping them live a more intentional life and align it with the things that they really, really love and that really fill them up and make them feel joyful, that I've actually put together a resource for you to help you get started down this path. It is not going to completely overhaul your life in a couple of hours, but it will put you on the right path to start making some really intentional changes, small changes, biting off one piece at a time until your life really starts to align with where you want it to be. My free life blueprinting tool that I put together using a bunch of theory and psychology and a bunch of techniques from the field of design thinking. It is available for you absolutely free. If you sign up at my website, go to aprilseifert.com, scroll all the way to the bottom in the footer and enter your information there. I don't share your information with anybody, but by putting your information in that box, you'll get immediate access to my free life blueprinting tool. That can be your first step to start putting some of the things that I've been talking about the last couple of weeks into action. And if you do, I really, really want to hear from you. I want to hear feedback on the tool itself. Does it look clear? Does it make sense? Did you find it useful? I want to hear about the things that you're excited about changing or scared to change. I want to hear about all of that. I want to hear from you guys about the things that you are committing to intentionally work on in 2018, because your life depends on it. It is so important. Put yourself first. You can do this year. Now, I said this was going to be a heavy episode, and I was not kidding. We've been through a whole lot in this last half hour or so, and I thank you so much for hanging with me and for listening to what is a pretty deep topic. But I hope by listening to last week's episode and this week's episode, I hope it all starts to make a little bit more sense. I'm so excited for the journey we're going to be on in 2018. I have a ton of ideas and a lot of exciting things coming up, and I so hope you'll join me on this journey. It is going to be an awesome year. Before I close out today, I want to say thank you to my awesome producer, Cameron Hill. You make me sound better than I possibly could on my own. That's one change that I made this year in order to be able to put out more content is I hired a producer, and he is wonderful. So thank you so much, Cameron. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would so appreciate it if you could head over to iTunes and leave me a rating or a review. It really does help when people are starting to search for inspirational content like the stuff that I'm putting out there. It helps me come up in the iTunes search ranking. For better or worse, ratings and reviews are one of the things that helps you rank a little bit better. So would really, really appreciate it if you could take a couple of moments and do that. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but next week we have an amazing interview with a really awesome woman. She is just completely badass. You're really going to love her. We'll get back to some regular interviews, but more so than I did last year, I'll be popping in from time to time, doing these sort of solo episodes to talk a little bit more about topics that I think are important in this realm and ways that you can start to put some of this information to work in your life. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I can't wait to introduce you to this year's very first Inspiring Woman. But until then, have an inspiring week.